Have you ever added some elements to your web page, expecting them to sit snugly next to each other, only to find a little bit of invisible space pushing them apart? It is a common puzzle that many aspiring web creators encounter. The direct answer is yes. HTML elements often come with default spacing, which includes both margin and padding. This built-in spacing is a fundamental part of how web browsers display content and arrange elements on your screen. This default spacing is not some mysterious force. It comes from what is called the user agent stylesheet. Every web browser like Chrome, Firefox, or Safari has its own set of default rules that tell it how to display standard HTML elements. For instance, a paragraph element, or p tag, naturally has some top and bottom margin to separate it from other paragraphs. Similarly, heading elements like H1 or H2 also have default margins to make them stand out. These defaults are designed to provide a basic, readable layout even without any custom styling. This spacing is a crucial part of the CSS box model, where every HTML element is treated as a rectangular box, with its content, padding, border, and margin. Padding is the space inside the box, between the content and the border, while margin is the space outside the box, pushing other elements away. Understanding these intrinsic browser styles helps explain why your elements do not always touch. So, how can you take control of this default spacing? The power lies in cascading style sheets, or CSS. You can easily override these browser defaults using CSS properties. For example, to remove all default margins and padding from an element, you can set its margin property to 0 and its padding property to 0. You can also specify individual sides, such as margin top or padding left, to fine-tune the spacing. A common practice for more predictable layouts is to apply a CSS reset, which sets many of these default margins and paddings to 0 across all elements, giving you a clean slate to build your design. Another helpful CSS property is box sizing, specifically border box, which changes how the browser calculates an element's total width and height, making layout more intuitive. It is interesting to note that block-level elements, which are elements that take up the full width available and start on a new line, can experience something called margin collapsing. This happens when the vertical margins of two adjacent block-level elements, instead of adding up, combine to form a single margin that is equal to the larger of the two. This can sometimes be a surprise for new developers. Also, using display inline block can offer a unique way to control spacing for elements that behave like both inline and block elements, allowing them to sit side by side while still respecting margin and padding. Ultimately, recognizing that HTML elements possess default spacing through browser style sheets is your first step towards mastery. By understanding the box model and skillfully applying CSS properties like margin, padding, and box sizing, you gain the ability to precisely dictate how your web content is arranged. This knowledge empowers you to craft visually appealing and well-structured web pages, moving from elements that mysteriously space themselves to a perfectly controlled and intentional design.